In the background of the project, the Mayor and Executive Board of Rotterdam have committed to achieve the goal of reducing the CO2 emissions by 49% by 2030. In order to do so, they have decided to introduce a zero-emission zone for Rotterdam. This is to invoke a shift to zero-emission city logistics. But what will happen to each logistics segment? They described their expectations in their roadmap of zero-emission city logistics. Now, we used the tactical freight simulator to simulate the impacts of these expert-based scenarios. We presented this paper at the TRB conference last year, and it was awarded with the best research paper. Now, the study area. Rotterdam is one of the major cities in the heart of the study area. It's in the province of South Holland with a population of 3.5 million inhabitants. Now, if we zoom in the city, into the city of Rotterdam, we see that the zero-emission zone spans across a very large part of the city. The assumptions that were made by the introduction of the zero-emission zone, it means that only full zero-emission vehicles may enter the zero-emission zone. Part of the delivery and collection of shipments will not take place by vehicles going in and out of the area, but it will take place through urban consolidation center on the edge of the zero-emission zone. Then the delivery and collection from the urban consolidation center, it will take place with dedicated zero-emission vehicles. Once again, we use transition scenarios that are specific for each logistics segment. Here, these tables indicate all the assumptions we made for the different industry sectors. So depending on the logistics segment, we assume a different probability that the freight flows will be consolidated through an urban consolidation center. And also, of course, the type of vehicle that will be used. It will depend on the logistics segment. The advantage of having this disaggregate large-scale simulator available is the possibility in making these heterogeneous scenario implementations. Now, let's go to the results. What can we learn from the simulation results? The next map shows all the changes in emissions. Of course, within the study area, we see that the emissions will drop by almost 100% on most of the links within the zero-emission zone. And in total, we can also measure what does this mean for the total reduction of CO2 emissions. Well, of course, within the zero-emission zone, almost all of the emissions are reduced, except for some links around the urban consolidation centers. But at the level of the city of Rotterdam, the emissions are just a bit below the 10%. Of course, this is also due to the fact that Rotterdam is a very large city, and a major part of the city consists of the port area. And a lot of the long-haul freight traffic transportation that goes to and from the port area is unaffected by this zero-emission zone. Also, we see some unexpected or difficult to predict impacts that due to the rerouting of shipments to the hubs, we also see that some trucks have to take a detour, and on some parts of the network, we see some increases in the traffic intensities. Again, with this detailed simulator, we can also focus on particular parts of the system. In this case, this map shows what are the likely impacts for the change in emissions for parcel delivery. Well, parcel delivery is usually organized through a limited number of depots, and through to the location of the depots and also the location of the urban consolidation centers, we see that these rerouting impacts can be quite significant. Therefore, it's very wise to use these detailed simulators to know in advance likely impacts. In summary, what can we conclude from the tactical freight simulator and the application to the zero-emission zone? First of all, the impacts are not trivial. Emissions within the zero-emission zone are reduced, But the vehicle kilometers outside of the zone, they tend to increase slightly as a result of the rerouting behavior and some trucks that have to make a detour around the area. The emissions within the zero emission zones are very strong, almost 100%, but at the city scale, this measures up to about 10% of the total emissions. So the zero emission zone is a good step towards the ambition to reduce the CO2 emissions. But if we really want to make or want to achieve the climate goals, much more measures are needed to further decarbonize also the long-haul freight transportation.